The Stupidest Waste of Money Part 3. A camping tent that was blown away by the wind. My friends and I decided to go camping, and I decided it was the perfect excuse to buy a new tent since my old one was too small. I paid $400 for it. It was some kind of super professional tent with a ton of features, and I thought it was worth it. But on the first night at the campsite, a strong wind started blowing away this super tent, breaking the frame. We hid in our friends' tents, and mine, split by the wind, lay in the forest. The next day, we just left it there since it was completely destroyed. It was probably the most pointless $400 I've ever spent in my life. Basement slot machine that everyone got tired of after a week. Inspired by old American movies, I bought an arcade machine, the one with ping pong and arcade games, for $2,500 for my basement. I thought it would be the center of entertainment for me and my friends. For the first week, everyone was excited. We would get together and organize mini tournaments. But then the game got boring, and the machine just sat idle, taking up space in the basement. It turned out that the same games were much easier to play on a phone or computer, and there was no special old-school charm to this machine. Skis I used once. When my friends invited me to go skiing, I decided that buying skis was a great idea. I bought myself a brand new set of skis for $1,800. Not even thinking about the fact that it was my first time skiing. My first and most likely my last. After a few attempts to stand on skis, I realized that they were not for me. I fell and pulled my leg badly, and all this equipment remained standing. The next time I want to ski, which is unlikely, I will just rent. The abdominal trainer that was a scam. The infomercial made this machine sound like the perfect solution. Just 10 minutes a day, and you'll have a sculpted stomach. I paid $300 for it, installed it at home, and used it for exactly a week. First, it was incredibly uncomfortable and caused back pain, and second, I began to realize that 10 minutes a day on the machine is far from all that's needed for abs. Now it sits in the corner of my bedroom, reminding me of how easily I fell for the promises of quick results. Huge pool for the backyard. Last year, on a hot summer day, I decided I absolutely had to get a pool. I bought an inflatable pool for $600 and spent another $600 on shipping and installation. We actually used it a couple of times, but it turned out to be a lot of work to keep it clean, especially with a lot of trees around it. Within a month, the water in the pool had turned green, the pump had broken, and the whole thing just looked like a giant puddle in the middle of the yard. I deflated it and put it in the shed, where it remains. The most expensive exercise bike that became a coat rack. I bought a stationary bike, the same popular brand that is advertised everywhere, for $2,200. I thought it would motivate me to work out every day, especially since the subscription to virtual classes was another $40 a month. For the first week, I actually worked out every day, enjoying the classes and the motivation from the instructors. But then I started skipping workouts, first one day, then another. After a couple of months, the bike became just a hanger for my shirts. Now it sits in the corner, and every time I look at it, I feel guilty about all the money I spent. Laser hair removal for a permanent effect. One of my biggest failures was laser hair removal, which I spent about $1,500 on. The ad promised a permanent effect, and I thought I would get rid of all the worries about shaving forever. After a few sessions, I realized that the reality is not so rosy. I had to constantly come back for new procedures, and the hair continued to grow. In addition, some sessions were painful, and I decided not to continue. In the end, the money was gone, and the result was very far from what I was promised. The bass guitar I bought for one song. One day, I heard a great song that really inspired me, and I decided I was going to be a musician. I went out and bought myself an $800 bass guitar and an amp for $300. I started taking lessons online and really tried my best, but I quickly realized that playing bass guitar in practice is not the same as listening to music. My enthusiasm died down after just a couple of months, when I realized that it would take years of practice to play the way I wanted to. Now the guitar just sits in the corner, and sometimes I look at it and think I should try again, but I never do. A convertible that I used 3 times. I decided I wanted to feel like I was in a movie, so I bought an old convertible for $7,000. I thought I would drive it on weekends, enjoying the wind in my hair and the sun. The reality was different. The convertible was noisy, not very comfortable, and cost me an extra $2,000 to repair. I only drove it 3 times, and each time it was more of a pain than a pleasure. I ended up selling it a year later at a loss. and decided that maybe dreams of romantic open-top driving were better left on the screen. The home theater you don't need. When we bought a new house, I decided to turn the basement into a home theater. I spent $5,000 on a projector, speakers, and special chairs. I was sure that I would constantly organize movie screenings for family and friends. The reality was that, of course, we watched a few movies, but then everyone went back to the habit of just sitting on the couch and watching TV shows on a regular TV. The chairs in the basement turned out to be uncomfortable, and turning on the projector every time was an unnecessary hassle. As a result, my entire home theater just sits idle, and I realized that not every technological miracle is really necessary. The pizza oven I never mastered. I bought a $1,300 custom pizza oven, excited about the idea of making authentic Italian pizza at home. I thought it would be fun to have friends over for pizza parties. But it turns out that getting the temperature right and the dough just right is an art form. I only made a good pizza a couple of times. The rest were either soggy or burnt. Eventually, I just went back to delivering pizza, and my expensive oven now sits in my backyard as a reminder of my failed culinary ambitions. A family picnic set that we never used. In a wave of desire to spend more time outdoors, I bought a large picnic set for $500. A basket, blankets, dishes, everything looked beautiful, like a picture. I thought that we would often go on picnics with the whole family, but life, as usual, makes its own adjustments. We kept putting it off, and then the cold months came. Then work and school again took all our free time. In the end, this set never left the garage. We often just stop at fast food and eat in the car, then have romantic picnics like in my dreams. Scuba diving equipment I used once. When I went on vacation to Florida, I thought buying my own scuba gear was a good idea. I spent $1,000 on a mask, fins, and even a wetsuit, so I wouldn't have to rent one at the beach. But it turned out that snorkeling wasn't as easy as I thought. I panicked underwater, couldn't dive deep, and got tired quickly. I used the gear exactly once, and now it's just sitting in the closet. Next time, if I ever decide to dive again, I'll definitely rent it. My cooking masterclass failure. I decided I was going to learn how to cook like a pro and bought an online cooking class for $300. The classes were taught by famous chefs, and it all looked very impressive. But after a couple of classes, I realized that I simply didn't have the patience or the skills to replicate all those complicated dishes. The ingredients were expensive, and sometimes I had to search through several stores to find them. After a few failed attempts, I gave up and went back to my simple recipes. Now I have access to a course that I will probably never use completely. A drum kit that even my neighbor got tired of. At some point, I decided that I wanted to learn how to play drums. I bought a complete kit for $2,000, put it in the garage, and thought that I would become a cool drummer. But the problem is that I did not take into account the noise. After a week, the neighbor began to complain, and I myself realized that it was not so fun to bang loudly and irritate everyone around, including my own ears. At first, I tried to practice only during the day, but it still created discomfort. In the end, the drums gathered dust in the garage for almost a year until I sold them for half the price to some guy who, it seems, does not care about the neighbors. Dogs I couldn't keep. One day I saw an ad for Labrador puppies and something clicked in my head. I got two, because the more the merrier. I paid $1,500 for each, and I thought we would happily walk and play in the park. But two puppies turned out to be too much to handle. I didn't take into account how much attention, time, and money they require. Constant trips to the vet, food, walking, it all just wasn't possible with my schedule. After 6 months, I realized I couldn't give them what they needed, so I found them a new home. It was very emotional and, frankly, extremely painful, but I failed and had to admit my mistake. Yoga membership for a year in advance. A couple of years ago, on New Year's Eve, I decided to start doing yoga and bought a yearly membership for $1,200. I thought it would be an incentive to attend classes regularly. For the first couple of months, I really did go, but then I started getting overwhelmed with work, tired, and every time I found an excuse to skip a class. As a result, I haven't gone there at all since April, but the membership remains. Every time I remembered about it, I felt guilty about wasted money. Now I prefer not to take any long-term subscriptions and pay for visits as they happen. The homebrew kit that ended in disaster. I've always loved beer, and the idea of brewing my own at home seemed great. I bought a $500 homebrewing kit, recipes, and all the equipment I needed. The first beer I made was terrible. It fermented too much, and some of the bottles even exploded in the pantry, spraying goo all over the place. I tried again, but the result was again disappointing. It turned out to be very difficult. You need to monitor the temperature, sterilize everything down to the smallest detail. In the end, I just threw out all the bottles and equipment and went back to buying beer at the store. Fish I couldn't take care of. I decided to get an aquarium, spent $700 on the aquarium, equipment, and beautiful fish. Everything looked so beautiful and peaceful at first. I did not take into account that the aquarium requires constant maintenance. The water needs to be changed, the filters cleaned, the fish fed regularly, and their health monitored. After a couple of months, the water in the aquarium became cloudy, and the fish began to get sick and die. I was too busy to do this constantly, and in the end it all turned into a sad and burdensome duty. There was one fish left, which I gave to a neighbor, and the aquarium and all the equipment are still in the garage. A snowmobile that I never took out into the snow. I saw a snowmobile at a garage sale one year, and thought it would be a great winter pastime. I paid $3,000 thinking I would ride it on snowy roads and spend time outdoors. But the winter was mild that year, there was almost no snow, and I never used the snowmobile. The following winters were no better, and I had less time to ride. It just sat in the garage until I finally sold it at a big loss. The lesson? Before buying expensive equipment, you need to think about how many times you will actually use it. The filming drone that crashed on the first day. I always dreamed of having a drone that would allow me to capture stunning views from the air. I bought one for $1,000 and decided to test it the first day I got it. It turned out that flying the drone was not as easy as I thought. It crashed into a tree after only 10 minutes of flying, and the camera was damaged. I tried to fix it, but it was more expensive than buying a new drone. After this experience, I decided that it would be better to refrain from using technology that I am not confident in. Elite Golf Club membership. I was invited to join a local golf club, and I thought it would be a great way to make connections and enjoy the game. I paid $4,000 for membership, bought all the necessary equipment, and was initially enthusiastic. The problem was that I had never played golf before, and as it turned out, I just didn't like it. I couldn't get used to the slow pace of the game and the endless attempts to hit the ball. After a few visits to the club, I realized that I was not comfortable there and stopped going. The $4,000 just went away, and I ended up selling the golf equipment at a garage sale. A home projector that was useless. I always liked the idea of having my own projector so I could watch movies on the wall like in a real movie theater. I spent $800 on a projector and screen, but then I realized that my living room was too bright, and I could barely see anything during the day. Even in the evening, the image was not as clear as on a regular TV. In the end, we watched movies on the projector literally a couple of times, until we all agreed that it was more convenient to just turn on the TV. The projector is gathering dust in the closet, and every time I look at it, I realize that dreams do not always coincide with reality.